The amazing digital Circus, the Harlan Ellison-inspired entertainment parody show with the built-in NB, every introvert, and God's favorite asshole, is really weird. And that's not a surprise, we're talking about Gooseworx, a triangle with a drill fetish and the internet queen of surreal... Yes, who I've been a fan of since her Spider Dance remix. But this is not a video about the contents of the show, because The Amazing Digital Circus, a show written and directed by Gooseworx, published intermittently on YouTube by Glitched Productions, and self-aware viral phenomenon that Goose does not want to touch again, is weirder. And I want to talk about it. The audience for this show is, by and large, familiar. There's a demographic of, let's be frank with ourselves, LGBTQ+ autistic Tumblr users that latch onto cartoons like Lampreys. I can say this, I'm one of them, it's fine. Homestuck, Gravity Falls, Adventure Time, Undertale, Stars in Time, Steven Universe, Omori, FNAF, Over the Garden Wall, Amphibia, the Vivzy Pop Extended Universe. If you're into any one of these, you were probably into a lot of the others. And TADC is the latest entrant in the literary canon of shit early Gen Z goes feral for when they're 2 steps removed from weebs but still get bullied in school. And aesthetically, that tracks. It's got a strong, bright aesthetic with plenty of room to explore. The worlds have strong escapist appeals that certain types of people can imagine thriving in. The cast is ultra varied with an emphasis on their relationships for easy shipping, and critically, there is a lot of effort spent setting up mysteries for big dramatic payoff, which is where Gooseworx' magnum opus starts to differ a lot from these stories. Because The Amazing Digital Circus isn't a mystery show. Let's break down what I'm talking about. In conventional seasonal TV, Breaking Bad will be in production for about a year, then it'll air episode 1, then episode 2 the next week, then 3, then 4 in that rhythm. That consistency gives it a lot of leeway in how it holds public attention. It starts, the hype is there, people are talking about it, and the next episode is this Friday, you've got to catch up. The show has ample time over a season to build momentum, and not much time between episodes to lose it. The money gets made within that season, reinvested into the show, investors get their cut of the licensing fees, repeat next season with a larger base of initial viewers. The late aughts, early 10s cartoon industry worked under the same business model, but the audience was a lot more online, specifically on hyper-communicative social platforms. Teenagers, who are maybe a little insecure about their interests because of the pervasive animation is for kids bias. They want to seem mature, they want to seem smart, and they want to talk about their favorite shows, so they copy what people were doing around shows like Lost. What if Ash Ketchum is in a coma? What if the Rugrats are all dead? Ed, Ed, and Eddie are the id, the superego, and the ego. Grunkle Stunkle's up to something behind the vending machine. What if Ooh was on Earth the whole time? There were a few very high-profile shows that validated that behavior. And it was fucking awesome! Getting to hyperfixate on details of a show, make wild left-field guesses on future reveals, with a proven chance that you might actually end up being right for all the clout in the world. All you have to do is watch the show, and then talk about it. It's fun on its own, but importantly, now you have social capital at stake. Your next theory must be true. Your media literacy and status as a serious fan is wrapped up in defending your prediction. That was, and still is, kerosene to the engagement engines that carry word of mouth. It has floated entire multi-million-dollar franchises. Independent projects don't have the budget to produce an entire season before merchant ad revenue roll in. Things come out a lot more intermittently. Hype dies down and can't keep momentum as easily without a weekly release schedule. Theory content offers a solution to that, because a new FNAF game isn't just more Five Nights at Freddy's. It could confirm who won the theory game, and if you lose, that's another chance to guess again. Never mind that it wasn't an interesting story, the hype cycle was never allowed to resolve. Theory content and long-standing mysteries in otherwise non-mystery shows have become a staple marketing tool of independent internet media. It's the cliffhanger remade for a slow burn, it's out when it's done, release schedule internet. There's no chance that Deltarune would have been an instant hit if people weren't suckered in with some all-caps vague posts before you could click download. And Undertale's imagery, before it could fully assert its themes in Chapter 2, these games are built around cliffhangers not just to keep tension, but to create maximum discussion. I'm not showing them in this video for a personal reason. Somebody is responsible for my vague posting, they know who they are, and I'm gonna choke them to death. These are the things that built the current Western cartoon fanbase. Background details and single-purpose foreshadowing, driving discussion and hype to pay off in huge lore drops. And usually, people are pretty good at adjusting their expectations. The Owl House and Amphibia were character first with a handful of world-building nouns and persistent detail, so the fandom locked in on what there was, but it never went to the same lengths as the Alex Hirsch ARG Conspiracy Hour. They spent their time shipping Lumity and imagining the frog girls in healthy relationships, because that's where the shows set their conflict. They were very clearly not mystery shows beyond what they had to be to get across, we are building to a payoff, get excited. And now we return to the amazing digital Circus. A show that does not beat the mystery allegations. So, TADC uses the same mechanisms of virality as dozens of shows before it. It self-describes as a surreal, psychological, dark comedy about cute cartoon characters who hate their lives and want to leave. That's not a mystery show. The biggest mystery in the show is what is wrong with him. The answer? She, they, Frosty, and Copium. We're just waiting on the juicy bits. But you're gonna get some theory content when a show hits this demographic. It's just how a post-Matt audience formalizes their speculation. People readjust and talk about existentialism with a side of lore. What's the big deal? Well, there is a lot in this pilot, structurally and aesthetically, that hits a brain on theories in all the wrong cortexes. Forgotten true names, digital hallucinations, panning to a corporate logo that Pomni doesn't notice, the cellar, the false office, the void. Kane says,
"We don't venture out into the void. Not even I know what's out there."
That is not a line you can drop without people asking the same question. It'll be totally spoiled is doubling down on the mystery of a place that would not be mentioned again until episode 8, and I don't think that what Kane wanted to surprise the crew with matters at that point. But this is out of the same mind as the Meatball Man. Gooseworx is a big fan of non sequitur and batshit cosmic implications just for a gag. And we do learn that Kane is a bit of a diva about his adventures, so that's fine. Everyone watching is used to what Gooseworx gets up to. It's not like the amazing digital Circus is going to be, 10 to 100 times bigger than their next most popular project? Oh no. The pilot episode does not focus its most visible conflict in the same place as any of the later episodes. It lays out the rules of engagement for the series not as a psych thriller and comedy, but as a lore-heavy what happened to get us here mystery, and its attitude towards foreshadowing would continue to court that audience through many later episodes, despite the themes and arcs moving forward just fine, without a word about C&A, without a single incursion from the void, without a single leak from the cellar. And the show's priorities are often at odds for it because Goose is kinda inexperienced. Look, first of all, the show's incredible. I'm not calling Goose a bad storyteller. I'm not calling anyone on the TADC crew anything short of mad geniuses for helping the show come out as deep and fun and gorgeous and all-around exceptional as it is. Especially when this is the director's first shot at serialization and dialogue-heavy storytelling, because let's look through her portfolio. Blue Channel, Little Runmo, The Pink City with Elaine Gets Adopted, Ghost of the Year, Darlie Boxman, extremely dialogue-light framing sequences for evocative imagery, gags, freak shit, and pitch-perfect scores. Conventional narrative with setup, payoff, climax, and an audience understanding of the events on screen is secondary at best to those feelings, to dream logic, absurdist visual storytelling, and failing that, just being weird. That shit can hit really hard in comedic short film and experimental aesthetic exploration. But it is a very different skill set to 8 episodes and a movie of character-driven psychological dark comedy, and with all of the love in my heart, that inexperience shows sometimes. The show's dialogue has a tendency to be extremely blunt, and the majority of character development happens in one-on-one conversations with no outside pressure. There's a pattern where Pomni ends up alone with someone and talks them through their issues. And if it's not Pomni, it's Kinger breaking into therapy speak. The show is, of course, aware of this. Pomni lampshades with,
"We're doing another one of these."
But there's truth in this jest from the jester. There is plenty of psychological depth to these characters, and the fact that that comes across at all is a surprise for her first crack at putting neuroses into words. But it's a very strange tension when the delivery is stymied by the show's otherwise buck-wild direction, tight banter, and visual exploration, getting very tame exactly once an episode when it wants a crack at resolving interpersonal conflict. Episode 6, They'll Get Guns, is rough for this. Ragatha's people-pleasing and self-hatred come to a boil next to the person least affected by it. Gangle is reassured about her personhood and self-determination right after using it in shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot, and it is my favorite episode, firstly because it's an animated extravaganza of cartoon violence, and secondly, because it proves the show is capable of breaking from monologues for its character development. Gangle's mask breaks to a smile. Pomni's arc of accepting the circus hits a beautiful, wordless climax as she leverages Jax's perspective, and when she does begin to therapize after meeting him where he's at for the episode, he can't handle that kind of vulnerability, so it escalates into denial and a fistfight, which ironically gets us more insight into both characters than simply baring souls and saying it outright ever could. Episode 6 shows every character at their most proactive, and it's such a stark contrast because by nature of the circus, they're very reactive elsewhere. Even when they're escaping the circus, we get there when Abel appears and they follow his instructions. Because proactive drama is extraordinarily difficult even when the premise doesn't box it out. That's why Jax is popular. As much as his archetype speech is a coping mechanism, he still is an instigator, and failing that, an opportunist. Proactive drama is hard at the best of times, and especially when we're aiming for character depth and understanding, there's a lot to gain from seeing both reactions to varied stressors and what characters get up to when they have a bit of leverage. Comedy is less even on the merits of reactive proactive. What your average cast can get up to on their own is a lot less interesting than the circumstances an author can contrive to throw at them. This is why Kane's adventures work as a formula, and it's also why Konosuba and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia are such genre standouts among isekai comedy and American sitcom. Shitty people like Cosma and Dee can pull themselves into absurdities, and it's a lot more natural than Sheldon Cooper stumbling into whatever it is he does. A lot of the comedy in TADC is slapstick, classic Looney Tunes, opportunity, reaction, absurdity. And here, we find that friction again. There is a self-evident love for cartooning and physical comedy that runs through all of Gooseworx's projects. In those purely visual setups, the drama, horror, comedy split is a lot smoother because it all comes from the same place. You're scared of the unknown and panic when Elaine gets her heart eaten by the Eldritch TSA, but at the end of the day, its name is Love Nugget and it looks like this. Goose is very good at balancing disparate tones through anticlimax and imagery that skirts commitment to either extreme. But dialogue is that committal. Pretty much by necessity, unless you're an entirely different kind of genius. The Amazing Digital Circus is a lot more focused in what it gets up to. When we're doing comedy, we are doing comedy. When we're doing drama, we are doing drama. Rarely if ever shall they meet, and it is the right choice for the show, but it doesn't matter how juicy the drama is or how gut-busting it is to smack Pomni with a life preserver, the dramatics don't do well under that reduction in screen time, and the pivots leave cracks in your emotional continuity, especially when it's using all the theory-based tropes to set up Abel and pull the rug out as a character beat. That decision can be read as mean-spirited to someone with a genuine interest in that part of the show, and I can't in good conscience call that an unreasonable takeaway. Is dunking on those people justified? Different discussion. I've got my own video on how lore theorizing gets in the way of thematic analysis. Debate amongst yourselves. The show has always been built on character psychology, but when our characterization circles the slapstick and banter in an unchanging world, it's hard to resent there being so much theory content when the most prominent forward momentum comes from Kane checking his photos, the stalking NPC growing closer, and Jax pausing in front of Ribbit's door. Something that only clocks as relevant if you're paying attention to Goose's Tumblr Ask page. I need to tread carefully here, because I'm stepping away from the contents of a show which is always going to be kind of impersonal, and towards the bearing of a private individual who can and should conduct herself however she damn well pleases. Nothing I've said in this video is intended as this is a bad thing that sucks, just this is a weird thing that's neat. And that is doubly true now that we're talking about a person. So, discourse aside, for now, the fact that Goose acts like a small and uninhibited hobby creator when she has an audience this massive is absolutely fucking fascinating. She answers questions like she's putting up a webcomic on Tumblr as vibe-heavy snapshots whenever she wraps up a page, and a few of her mutuals are curious what background lore they'll probably never get to. Pomni had a frog design before we settle on gestures. That's interesting. Here's the character ages. Important for a fandom to know and not likely to come up naturally. What's the worst thing Jax ever did? You'll see. Who abstracted before Kaufmo? Ribbit. A lot of these are good fun, and a lot of others materially change the show. In a vacuum, Jax pausing at the door leaves a lot open to interpretation. But when we're primed to think of the frog character as an important enough death to get a Tumblr answer, the tropes autocomplete in your head and again reward being theory-pilled before we get proper emotional context for their relationship. How would Jax's failed abstraction hit if we weren't being hyper-vigilant about frog characters and kinda knowing the narrative going in? I don't know. And that's the point. There are jokes in the show that do not exist if you haven't seen Goose shitposting about Pomni's iconic unicorn horn picking up a Soviet signal. Trans Jax is a super insightful read on his self-loathing and attitudes around himself. The parallels to a trans experience are right there, but I don't know if it would be this prevalent a reading if Goose hadn't early on shown concept art of him taking progesterone to be better at gambling. Would Jax have ever denied being an egg if this weren't a prevalent idea? The dialogue is not subtle. I give Goose the credit that this was always planned, but a lot of people are in on it because they were given a lifeline and led by the nose to the aesthetics of depth, instead of actually finding what is compelling about his conflicts. I think underlying a lot of this mismatched audience problem could be that even as she tries to do something very different, Goose is influenced by the same things as the mainstream cartoon fanbase. What does foreshadowing look like? What does building to a climax look like? A lot of the strangeness and conflicting forces within the Amazing Digital Circus's presentation could be explained by Goose getting her understanding of long-form showrunning and narrative structure from the Tumblr canon, either by unconscious influence or knowingly taking that type of thing to create something adjacent without knowing the full consequences. Not to imply the friction is because she hadn't thought this through, but because the combination of mega viral, public creator, theorist rug pull character drama with a suicide analog and silly marketable plushies doing cartoon violence that children can laugh at hasn't exactly happened before. Nobody could see this coming. Am I in Goose's head to say definitively? No, I'm not theorizing. I am fucking guessing. Do not run with this idea. It's interesting and that's not the same as true. It's a lot easier to second guess a creator when they know the in-jokes you're laughing at, talk about shipping, and comment on the fandom's media literacy so you know she's got her eye on you. She has acknowledged the theory content and shipping outside and inside official material. That's gonna feel like she's laying out the terms of engagement for the show as shipping and theory fodder, giving the idea that she's on your level. Even if she's really fucking not. There are two kinds of fandom people. There are fandom people in the sense that I like a show, I talk about it with other people who like the show. Some of these guys would be cute couples. Maybe there's a secret hints to notice and wonder what they mean. Here's a funny little guy who fits into the world for fanfiction. And then there are fandom people, for whom those fandom activities, shipping, theorizing, writing fanfic, eclipse actually watching the show. The show's only value to this group is how it enables agenda posting, power scaling, waifu PFPs, coffee shop AUs, memes, and fucking discourse for discourse's sake. That's not a group of people that's gonna be receptive to Goose getting as serious as she has with the show, and they have unfortunately been thoroughly baited into becoming what this fandom is known for. People will instigate a lot of shit over any disruptions in character dynamics because their fun is had building off of the idea of the show instead of what is actually happening. Narrative be damned, the agenda must be maintained. What agenda? The actual substance is nuanced and quiet so everybody gets to make their own. These are the people who see Ragatha and Jax fight in episode 5 and feel the need to pick sides and moralize about it because they can't handle anything they can't make into a fanfic template. The people for whom Soma Theory would ruin the show. The people who run Goose off of Reddit for saying Pomni and Jax are the main characters. The people who are so compelled to theorize for the sake of theorizing that 2 of the 3 quotes on TV tropes for epileptic trees are making fun of them. The people who call Jax and Pomni an abusive self-ship and therefore Goose is a bad person for giving him screen time. The people who see Glitch getting the show a theatrical run and beyond being annoyed by a spoiler delay, cannot go 2 weeks without the show and feel the need to villainize somebody about it. People who have so much of their identity invested exclusively in one property that it begins to strike as abnormal when someone's interests are broader than one thing, and they make r/multi-fandom, which anybody else on Earth would call being a slightly balanced human being, and they're the reason I'm probably not going to the fucking theater come June! Look, I am a toxic fanboy of Pokemon. I ship Cruzy and fucking Buggy Beowulf. I just also watch Begonia, all things in moderation. You're allowed to like a side character. That's Toby Fox and Terry Pratchett's entire career. Gooseworx is an eccentric and unconventional artist that even as she dips her toes into a more mainstream medium, the mainstream is not fully ready for. And a bunch of moralistic Puritans who got in on a viral meme show without the greater context of her work are even less prepared. It has succeeded as it has because of them and reached more genuine enjoyers than it could without them, and they have caused untold problems. These can both be true. Whether they were pulled intentionally as coincidence of a funny metafiction bait and switch, or it's genuinely accidental and this is how Goose felt she could best tell her story, or if she thought people would be better at readjusting. It's not my place to have a goddamn clue.
I just think that's really weird, really interesting, and I hope that you did too.
So if you're going to the theater, behave yourself, okay? I want to hear about some iron lung courtesy. Tag your spoilers. I'm looking forward to the Bunny Best Boy having about 13 crises and whatever art house porno Goose makes after this. And the Alabaster Dawn Early Access and Knights of Guinevere. God, it looks so fucking peak. Anyways, yeah. Good night, everybody.